Ja, moin, moin. Ähm, Wie bisher mit eurem bisherigen Feedback auch, nehme ich mir das natürlich immer sehr zu Herzen und würde mich natürlich auch sehr darüber freuen, wenn mir ein bisschen Feedback für diese Folge zugutekommt, weil es nun mal die erste komplett englischsprachige Folge ist. Und ja, jetzt wünsche ich euch ganz viel Spaß mit Who Actually Is Jens Anso. Hello and a dear welcome to a new episode of Tim's Voicemails, and for the first time, full English. And that's for a very, very special reason for me, exactly. And that is my guest for today. And for today, I have one of the most prominent knife designers and makers in our EDC community. And with that, it's Jens Anso. Very, very much welcome. It's an honor for me to have you here on my podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the warm welcome and the kind words.
Of course, of course. I mean, you are with GiantMouse and your own designs, or with your own brand, I should say. Um, you you made your name and your standpoint, at least in the whole community, right? And that's with, for me, very gentlemanly and elegant folders and fixed blades. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems about right. That has been a development over the years, of course, and I, as many other makers and designers, have been exploring all various kind of styles over the years. I guess that's some of the benefits of having been in the game for so long, is that you actually have had time to find your style over a number of years. I've been full time dedicated to this craft for the past 23 years.
Yeah, that's a whole bag of experience.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, so how has EDC always played a role in your life, or was it more like I heard it from a lot of knife makers actually that their fascination for knives came not from EDC but from making knives.
Yeah, and I would say that has, at least to a point, also been the fact for me. I've always carried a knife. Long before I started making knives, I would carry a knife. I believe I got my first knife when I was 5 years old, and I would carry a knife every day since then. And I made my first knife when I was 16
Okay.
in 1989.
Okay.
As for EDC, for me, carrying a knife has always been the main focus, but thinking back to a more broad attention to EDC, I would say that the Swiss Army knife has always played a factor in my life, and it still do that to this day. I find that having those extra tools handy and in your pocket has always been something that I have been utilizing in my day-to-day life. So EDC has always played a factor. I got my first Swiss Army knife, I guess, when I was 8 or 9, and I haven't been without one since. And I don't carry one in my pocket much anymore, though I occasionally will carry a Swiss Army knife, just for the fact that Denmark is not a super knife friendly country.
Oh, yeah.
And a Swiss Army knife would be judged very much more mildly than, say, a one hand open folder with 9 centimeter long blade. Though it's legal to carry such a knife for legal activities like hunting or fishing, or if you go on a trip to the park to eat your food, then in theory, at least, you can carry more or less anything in Denmark. But the Swiss Army knife, just for the non-threatening appearance, that would be much more acceptable. But I do carry the Swiss Army knife with me in my bag, in my EDC bag, or when I travel. Especially when I travel, I always make sure to put a Swiss Army knife in my toilet bag, just so I know that regardless of where I end up, I will have a knife with me, and the tools play a big factor. Also, many years ago, I studied industrial design and architecture, and I think that during those 5 years, I started taking the whole EDC thing a little more seriously, in that I bought my first multi-tool. And in the School of Architecture, we did a lot of model making. We did a lot of taking products apart to study the interior, and everybody needed tools. And I chose a SOC power tool that I still have today. It's actually been the only multi-tool I ever owned, but I actually still use it now and again.
As you talked about your regional knife laws in Denmark, because I'm from Germany, I can understand you so good because our knife laws are strict as well, right? I mean, we also have these exceptions for if you have your knife with you for a certain purpose, like hunting, fishing, exactly the same points you just made. And then the SRK, the Swiss Army knife, has a very much more much more acceptance in the in the whole community we live in. So yeah, it's nearly the perfect EDC maybe for countries like ours. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, EDC. Yeah, I don't know. EDC for me is always you. I think for me you brought it exactly to the point. For being the SRK, you have very much all the tools you need. You can travel with it, and in the most countries, you don't have much. How do I say it? Don't come into contact with the knife laws as much because of the tradition in the knife itself and the global acceptance of the knife itself. And it's also a multi-tool, right?
Yeah, and to me, I look at it as it will solve 100 problems poorly, but you're actually able to solve them.
Exactly.
Rather than trying to make do or having to borrow a screwdriver in the hotel to fix your suitcase or something like that. I like to be able to solve whatever need that may occur, especially while traveling. The sack comes in handy. While at home, obviously, I have all the tools that I need, but also just driving around the car or whatever, just having those possibilities of solving your own problems, that's something that's always been a factor for me. And I would always be the guy that people would approach to borrow a knife or a screwdriver, and having that extra tool. I would always carry two knives while studying in the School of Architecture, just because I didn't want to borrow out my good knife.
So EDC is like being prepared for every task you might tackle in your everyday life. I think that's brings it quite to the point, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
So how did you first came into contact with designing EDC gear or knives, for that matter?
So I've always considered what I have been doing, or at least from a very early point in my knife making career, I've been considering myself as a
Mhm.
designer, specifically after taking a master's degree in industrial design. That has, of course, um, put a line underneath knife
Mhm.
designer. Um, and while I was finalizing my last exam in School of Architecture, the American Knife magazine called Tactical Knives wrote an article about me and one of my knife models, and that resulted in 100 orders while I was doing my final exams and living in a small apartment with a tiny, tiny workshop in my bike
Mhm.
shed. So straight out of college, I went out and bought a house so I could build a workshop until I got a real job.
Mhm.
But I just sticked with it. So I would say if you broaden the spectrum of EDC gear outside of strictly knife making, I would say that very specifically when I bought my first CNC in 2009, that led to designing gear outside of the knife world as
Ah,
well.
okay. You talked about the knife design, which you got featured or got you featured in the magazine. Um,
Yeah,
that you also mentioned it in one of your YouTube videos. For you out there who are
yeah,
interested in watching Jens's YouTube videos, just check the info box. You will find the link straight to his YouTube channel. Um, and that was the Sheepsfoot, right?
yeah, yeah. I designed the Sheepsfoot um, 26 years ago, actually. Last year, we put out a new and revised version for the 25th anniversary, but I designed that knife while I was in college. And and it was that knife that got featured and that knife that really helped build my career because that was the knife model that I received 100 orders for, and it actually goes very well together with one of my most important advices to people approaching knife making is don't go all over the place at once. Try and find one model that you enjoy making and then make a ton of
Mhm.
them, because when you do repeated work and you work within a confined space of challenges, that's when you can see a ton of improvement from knife to knife. Whereas if you one day make a dagger and the next day you make a folder and then the third day you make a two-handed sword, then you're exposed to so many challenges that differ from anything that you've tried before. And while it will create a great craftsman in the end, the learning curve is just super steep. So I always encourage people to repeat the same design multiple times to see improvement
Mm,
within that, and that has really been the case with the sheep's
okay.
foot. I was exposed to one of my very early sheep's foots that I made, I would say, at least 20 years ago. Probably it was probably one of those very first knives that got ordered. I saw one of those when I was at the New York Custom Knife Show a couple of weeks ago, and I can definitely see the improvement that has happened since then.
Uh, so your advice would be take step by step and tackle every task by task.
Yeah,
Would you say the sheep's foot is the backbone of Anso of Denmark?
yeah, that would be pretty accurate. Of course, or at least the origin
Mhm.
of it. It still plays a significant role, and we have made quite a few of them since the reintroduction last summer. It's sold out at the moment, but we are reintroducing it very soon again. But we are working on so many projects at the moment that we have had to just delay the return of the Sheepsfoot again.
So about your new projects, we will talk about it later. I hope so, at least.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Who would you recommend the Sheepsfoot to?
To me, the Sheepsfoot is, or I designed the Sheepsfoot as an alternative to a folding knife. So it's a relatively small fixed blade. I think the overall length is something like 12 or 13 centimeters with 5 centimeters worth of edge. And so the size of it actually lends itself well to pocket carry. But of course, being a fixed blade, it's stronger than any folder out there.
Yeah.
I use it a lot for just general EDC purposes, like opening a box, cutting paper, cutting an article out of a newspaper, or whittling on a small stick. Just smaller cutting chores. That it excels really much in that regard. And I designed it at a point in my career before I started making folders. So this was a way for me to approach a market that was dominated by folders by designing something that could substitute a folder.
Yeah, and that's always the problem with fixed blades, right? So a folder folds into a smaller piece of carriage,
Yeah.
and a fixed blade is always, you can't fold it, right? If you do, it's broken. So, so for me, smaller fixed blades became very prominent in my EDC, right? So smaller fixed blades can definitely substitute a folder, just like you said. Yeah. And with that in mind, your most recent folder is the Aros, right?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the design of the Aros?
So it was a design that, without being very solid in my mind, was just roaming around my brain for quite a bit of time. I wanted to design a small everyday carry folder, kind of gentleman-like folder, but still a knife that would be strong enough to handle basically any chores that you would throw at it on a regular basis. And it's quite often for me that I will have this idea of a design just simmering in my brain for a long time without actually trying to put it down on paper, or that the idea won't materialize on paper until it's been simmering for a while. And I was in New York City for the custom knife show in February last year, and spent 5 days after the show just walking around Manhattan, which I really, really enjoy. And Manhattan has always been a huge inspiration to me. So I've spent 5 days just walking around, and then taking breaks in restaurants or bars or cafes. And each time I would sit down and sketch out whatever came to mind. And then this new project started materializing in one of these restaurants, where I had a glass of red wine, which is always a benefiting factor when I do design work. It kind of loosen up everything. And the first sketch of the Aros came about, and I actually documented basically the whole process on my YouTube channel, where I actually continued with the design on camera. So if interested, the listeners can take part of the full story in there. And we just did episode 5 that hasn't been aired yet, but just like a follow-up
Okay.
after
Awesome.
putting it into
Yeah, I
production.
myself enjoyed the whole series until now, episode 4, right? A lot,
Yeah.
because there are not many knife designers and makers out there who share their process to such a detail like you did with the Aros. And that makes for me as a customer, um, it's just fun, because always you just see the end product as a customer. You just see the finalized product. You don't get much into prototypes, drawings, and the whole process of finding solutions of problems that occur during the whole knife making process, right? And
Yeah.
then having someone like you share the process to a certain grade of detail you want to share, right? Is very much new and enjoyable for me, at least. I don't know, maybe there are some people who don't share the same thoughts as I do, but yeah, for me it was fun.
No, I think that we live in a world of mass production, and the knife market has grown to such an extent where every day there's a
Mm,
new company arising with with new knife models. And I think that it's really important that you tell a good story and that you educate your fans and customers so they actually realize why does this knife cost X amount of dollars or euros, and why does this knife cost X amount of euros? What's the from a non knife fan, two knives would look completely
mm,
identical, but one is 50 euros and one is 5,000 euros. What's the
yeah,
difference? And it can be very difficult to see that, even for people who have been interested in knives for a long time.
mm,
So I think that it's really important. It's a really important task for me as a creator to actually tell a story about how do we make what we do. Of course, it's not a tutorial on how to become a knife designer or a
yeah,
knife manufacturer, but sharing the process and also the frustrations and the problems that occur, which they always
mm,
do, and stuff like that. Just sharing everything will also make people much more understanding on why does it actually take 10 weeks to produce this from
yeah.
ordering, and why does it cost what it does. It makes the end user much more connected to the product as well.
Exactly, yeah. Because that's also the part I enjoy the most. Because without watching those videos, you might, as you just said, no, you just might ask yourself, okay, why is it so pricey? Yeah, and the video and the look into the whole process might kind of justify the price behind it. Yeah, and also for me, it's just consuming content that's just fun, right?
Mm.
So the Aros and the Sheepsfoot are your most recent models and your first shop build models.
Yeah, yeah. I had to come up with a term that kind of defined a difference between my full custom knives and the Aros and the Sheepsfoot. And the main difference is that, at least the intention with specifically the Aros, is that I take myself a bit out of the process and let my team
Mhm.
build these knives. I have a workshop and I have 3 guys working for me that helps me run all the machines and do work around the shop. And rather than trying to find a spot in a already predefined terminology around knives, it's not a production knife, is it, or is it not? It's not a midtech. It didn't quite fit into the already in place terminology. So I came up with the term shop build that defines that this is a knife that is built in-house in my shop, but in theory, at least, without my interaction with it. It's not quite there yet, or maybe it won't ever be there yet. So far, I've assembled at least 300 hours myself, and I sharpen all the knives myself, and I do all the quality control along with my team. But the idea with shop build was that I could take myself out of the building process to allow me to spend more time on custom knives and more design work, and actually work on some of all the ideas that I have that never come into fruition because time is just always limited.
So both knives, the Aros and the Sheepsfoot, feature a sheepsfoot blade. Is the sheepsfoot blade shape your go-to blade shape? Would you recommend it as such?
I would say as the sheepsfoot, obviously from the name, features the sheepsfoot blade. In my opinion, the sheepsfoot blade have a straight edge, and the Aros, I would say, has a modified
Okay.
sheepsfoot blade as it has a curvy edge. I believe that a curvy edge will be a little more utilitarian than a straight edge, though they go very nice together, both of these blades in the EDC usage. I think that having a very accurate point like you have on a sheepsfoot blade is really good for part of the everyday carry segment, like carving out a splinter of your finger, or doing very delicate cuts on paper, stuff like that. I think that the sheepsfoot has some advantages over at least some other knife shapes. There's a bunch of knife shapes that you would never see from me, but that's a whole different story. Just again, that's just a matter of taste. But I always, first and foremost, go for designing and making very utilitarian knives.
Would you consider both knives a one and done in such a way that you buy the Aros, or you have the Aros or the Sheepsfoot or both, and you could carry them nonstop for the rest of your life?
And not needing
Yeah,
another
exactly.
knife.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, if the specific purpose was everyday carry, I would say yeah. Except of course that's not a very good business strategy. But also I know that use is not the only factor that comes into play, or need is not. You need for another knife is not user based. Usually, it's more need based.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about that. But yeah, I find that my work with the Aros has been some of my very best, if not the best, work around creating a everyday carry folder that is the perfect carry for basically any need that occurs.
Okay.
That said, I know that my viewpoint will probably change when I design the next very best everyday carry folder. But I think I came I came very, very close with the Aros, that's for sure. Of course, size is also a matter of taste. Some will carry a smaller knife, some will carry a larger knife, and the Aros is a somewhat smaller knife with, I think the edge is about 6 centimeters. So it's a smaller folder.
But small doesn't make it bad, right? So it's for myself, I enjoy smaller blades, but also I do pack the big guns, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
for EDC, and especially when you pull out your knife in the public, it's much more friendly to have a friendly blade shape, like the Sheepsfoot, for example, or the
Mhm.
modified Sheepsfoot on the Aros, and not such a big blade, right? Because
Oh
yeah,
yeah, for sure,
because if you
for
pull
sure.
out like a cold steel, I don't know, right, in the public to cut your apple, everyone will just look at panic at you. But if you pull out like the Sheepsfoot or the Aros, because of its shape and its design, and its more elegant lines, I don't think it would pull much attention in public. And for that matter,
No, but also in when it comes to EDC, if you're not carrying it,
mm,
then it doesn't help you. And and I just find myself that carrying a smaller blade is much more likely than carrying a bigger blade. I will carry a big folder when I go hunting or going backpacking out in the
mm,
woods, stuff like that. Then I will pack a few knives. But the best everyday carry folder is the one that you have in your pocket when you
yeah,
need it. And a smaller knife just has more likeliness to be
yeah,
carried.
exactly. Um, so yeah, a one and done. To be honest, as a knife enthusiast, there will never be such a thing, right?
No, 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 never.
Because every knife is enjoyable. Every knife has its purposes, and yeah, there will never be such a thing as a one and done.
And I think if I had the feeling that this would be the one design to end all, then I could just as well just close down my design shop and retire, right? And I don't have any intention of doing
I
that.
hope
But
so. So how do you come up with new ideas?
that's a very good question, and I don't necessarily always know myself. Oftentimes, I will just sit down with a blank piece of paper and just sketch
Mhm.
away. It helps if I have some kind of direction that I need to go in. Often I will make small assignments for myself. So now that the Aros has been the most recent project, well, then an assignment could be, well, design a EDC folder that is 2 centimeters larger, for instance. So at least I have some kind of boundaries. Other times when it comes to be around the gear that I've been designing, small pry tools and carabiners, it usually comes from my personal need of having something, or maybe just the need for putting out a new product on my webpage. So the inspiration for the specific thing that I design comes from all different kinds of ideas, but inspiration specifically is something that I don't seek out inspiration for a specific
Mhm.
project. I don't if I design a knife, I don't go out and look at other knives to find
Mhm.
inspiration. I see inspiration more as a state of mind for me as a designer rather than something that I seek out. So I try to do things that I know will inspire me. For instance, my recent travel to New York. I don't know what it is about that city, but it always leaves me enormously
Okay.
inspired. Um, so I try to fill up my inspiration bank by going to a museum, going to these cities, just getting out of my workshop. Going to a flea market is something that has inspired me before. Just seeing old quirky products that is no longer being produced can be an inspiration to a
Mm,
mechanism or something like that.
okay. So will there be more shop built knives like the Aros and the Sheepsfoot?
Yeah, for sure. The success that we've seen with the Aros has the potential and a lot of benefits around it. One is that being a custom knife maker, it is impossible for me to satisfy every customer's need.
Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah.
possible. There's just a limit to how many knives that I can build by hand. Introducing the Aros made it one of our best-selling designs within the first
Oh,
month,
wow.
and that just means that you can put knives in so many more hands
Mm,
while still achieving a very high level of quality, and I have 100% control of the
mm,
outcome. Where, of course, me being a designer for other companies and a designer in GiantMouse, of course, we put out a lot of knives with my name on it, of course. But having a product produced in your own shop is just so much more satisfaction.
mm,
There's so much more satisfaction about having full
yeah.
control of the product that you have being made in the shop. So my plan, without it being a very solid plan, but my idea with shop build is that we should at least put out a new folder once a year or
Okay.
so.
So is there already something in the works? You just mentioned your last trip to New York. I think the NYCKAS is just a few weeks
Yeah.
back, right?
So I'm yeah, I think 3 weeks,
Yeah.
4 weeks maybe. Um, I'm always working with designs, but I'm also one that takes very fast
Okay.
decisions. So I can also work on a project and then decide that, okay, tomorrow we will start producing this as a shop build project. It of course takes some preparation, but right now I'm actually focusing on my next custom
Oh, okay.
project, which and again, I can only be one place at a time. So right now, my full focus is on the new custom project, and we are building the first prototype right
Oh,
now. Actually,
wow. Can you give away any details about it?
I can, especially because I already did give away some details on my YouTube
Okay.
channel. I documented the design phase on this project as well, being the first custom project that I
Mhm.
have been documenting. So right before Christmas, I did a fun little episode where I set a timer and designed as many sketches I could, or I made as many sketches as I could within 15 minutes.
Okay.
And that turned out to be 20
Wow.
sketches for a folder design. I'm a little reluctant about calling it a design because when you spend something like 30, 40 seconds on a sketch, it's just that, a
Yeah.
sketch and not a
Yeah.
design for sure. But that episode was followed by another episode where I took those sketches and started looking for potential for a new project. And in that last episode, I actually got pretty far with that project. I can reveal the name and some of the details about it here that hasn't been revealed
Oh
anywhere
wow.
before. And one thing is it will be a bolster lock.
Oh, okay.
So a mix between a liner lock and a frame lock. I have never done that before, so that's pretty exciting for me at least. And we started making the parts for the first prototype this week actually. The name will be Sonic, and it will be available in an option that allows for two-hand opening,
Oh, okay.
which I hear is pretty ideal in Germany.
It absolutely is, yeah. Oh, that yeah.
So we are doing the next episode next week, where I on video will introduce the first prototype. But I'm pretty excited about that. It's been a while since I put out a new custom knife. The last one I put out was the Zero, which was a Zero 2.0. It was an old design that I refreshed.
Okay.
So it's been a couple of years since I put out a brand new custom knife, and this one I'm super excited about.
And the details you mentioned, and knowing you as a knife designer or your designs makes me already excited about it, to be honest. Because
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about the
yeah,
details as
the
well.
bolster lock also gives you very much freedom in choosing scale material or overlay
Yeah,
material in that.
yeah.
So
And I haven't. I've been focusing on doing inlays in full titanium frames for so many years. But before doing that, I would do regular bolsters with handle materials, and I'm excited about getting back into that game again.
has the Sonic the potential to be your most favorite design? Your most new favorite design?
Yeah, well, I think it's one of it's probably going to be one of my favorites, as will all new designs usually
Yeah.
be. If that was a little quirky sentence, but my most favorite design is always the one that I'm working
Yeah,
on
yeah.
right now, and the Sonic is definitely in that ballpark. I also do consider it to be I consider it to be one of my best
Oh, okay.
designs in recent years as well. If that is true or not, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm somewhat biased about it, of course, being it's a brand new design. But it has a lot of potential, and it has some references to some of my more recent designs in the detail level. The lanyard hole has seen some inspiration from the Sheepsfoot, as well as the Aros,
Okay.
and one of the things that I find most interesting and also most difficult in doing design work on knives is the detail level. I like to use a word that I'm not native English speaking is a little difficult, but I was recently exposed to a word that is called quintessence, which means it's an object that is how do you quintessence is something that is perfectly itself.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
perfect. It's not necessarily perfect, but it's perfectly itself.
Yep.
So you can't subtract anything from it, and if you add something to it, you're making it
Yeah.
worse. So quintessence actually defines the way that I do design work quite well, in that I try to come up with a design and then I take away as much as possible to make it as simple as possible, but I have complex detailing. I don't know if that whole ramble made any sense, but in my head it did.
So the Sonic is at the point where you are manufacturing the prototype, right?
Yeah.
So release of it will maybe later this year.
Yes. I'm not exactly sure how it will be released yet. Normally, I would accept orders for custom knives, and I will for this as well. But I think that if for nothing else, to have pictures for people to get inspiration for the details for their order, I need to produce a good handful of knives before I take the order. So I'm thinking that the first introduction for the model will probably be at my online knife show, Launch 15 in August.
Okay.
I will be showing pictures of it before then, and maybe I will sell a few before then, but the official launch of the design will probably be at Launch 15.
Okay. So for everyone out there who's already excited about the Sonic, follow Jens on Instagram. Hopefully you already do. Check his YouTube channel, and just be updated, because I'm very excited myself. I will frequently check your YouTube channel, especially. Yes.
Yeah. I suggest also signing up for my newsletter, because the way that I handle information is a little different on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, but I always give people a head start via my newsletter. So if you want to get the latest updates, the newsletter is usually the place to go, and that will lead you both to Instagram and Facebook and YouTube.
Oh, okay, so yeah, just check all four, all three.
Yeah. Of course.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely, after we finish this interview, I will definitely check out the Sonic and the YouTube videos you just mentioned. Of course, you will find the link in the description of this episode for everyone listening. And more personal question: is Anso of Denmark and GiantMouse, or your whole yeah, how should I say it? Your whole knife maker designer life, is that a dream come true for you?
I think it's a dream that is ever evolving. I've never, before becoming self-employed as a knife maker, I had absolutely no dream of being self-employed. I educated myself as an industrial designer, and right up until my final project, I had the biggest intention of being employed by a design company.
Okay.
And even after buying the house to build my workshop, to build the 100 Sheepsfoot orders, my intention was to do that until I could get a proper job.
Okay.
So it was kind of coincidental that I became a full-time knife maker. Being a full-time knife maker exposed me to the life of being self-employed, and I really enjoy that. So So I do what I do because I'm so passionate about it, and I couldn't see myself live a different life
Mm.
other than what I'm doing. So in that context, yes, it's definitely a dream come true, but it is an ever evolving dream. That's for sure. Also, the first 8 or 9 years of being self-employed, it was just me in the shop. I would had no intention of ever being a small factory like we are today,
Mm.
really, with guys working for me. I never had any ambition in that direction. So it's always an ever evolving process and ever evolving dream.
So you just said you wanted to make knives until you are employed with a proper job. So
Yeah,
that you can just check, right?
I think I can check that.
um, so in your whole career as a knife designer and maker, is there a personal highlight for you?
I think there's a ton of highlights all over the career, and I'm happy about that, and I feel very fortunate and grateful
Mm.
about all the wonderful experiences that I have had living the life that I do live here. One, if I had to pick a few, the first knife that was put into production was the Spyderco Rock Lobster, and getting that first email from Sal Glesser showing interest in my work, and I was at that time and remained still a huge Spyderco fan. That was one of the biggest
Wow.
highlights in my professional
Mm.
career. Signing a contract with Zero Tolerance, that was a very big highlight as well. But also meeting and visiting some of the big icons in the knife making game. I've had the very fortunate luck of being able to visit and be friends with Ken
Oh
Onion.
yeah.
I visited his shop in Hawaii a number of years back. I've visited Tom Mayo. I visited Bob Tassola. Bob Tassola have had a huge factor in how I became a folding knife maker. Um, so meeting all these wonderful people and having a chance to be friends with them, that is also some huge highlights.
Mm.
And but also just experience my words are slipping here. Experiencing the massive interest and joy around what I do, and just see how people react to my work and how happy they are when they receive something
Mm.
from me. So that's really just a daily reminder of what I do, and so without sounding too corny about it, I think that not every day is a highlight, but certainly the life that I live is the highlight of my career,
The hard work pays off, right?
for sure.
How would you describe yourself or the whole brand with just 3 words?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. So I built my whole company and everything I do around passion. So passion is definitely one of those 3 words. If there wasn't passion involved, there would be no Anso of
Yeah,
Denmark. There's so many easier ways to make a living than what I
yeah.
do. So if it wasn't for passion, it would be very hard. I I would have a hard time finding a more fun way to make a living than what I
Yeah.
do. So, but definitely passion. To me, quality is the most important aspect around my work. So that would definitely be a second word to describe. So passion and quality, and I would say, having stayed in the game for so many years, dedication, both to just stay at it and 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 meet every challenge with an open heart and just stick to it. That is also something that's super important. So I would say passion, quality, and dedication is really important.
I find it quite funny because all three words kind of go with each other, right? So
Yeah,
passion makes the dedication easy, and with both of them, quality comes by itself.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point of view.
Yeah, for that, we just talked about an hour for now. It was really, really fun
Yeah.
having you here. It's still an honor for me having you on my podcast, for for that matter. Just thinking back, I just started about uh, quite close to 1.5 years ago. Last year, January, was my first episode released. So it's a very young podcast, but having you here right now is just really, really great honor and makes me really proud of myself.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a big pleasure talking with you and being on your podcast. I always enjoy talking about myself. so, so no, really, I think that one of my most important tasks is to help spread the word of this wonderful community we're all involved
Mm,
in. And I think that by participating in a podcast like this, I help spread the joy of what we're doing, and but also make things a little more near, that you allow people to understand more about the different
yeah.
brands that we all love. And so I think that that is an important part. But I really enjoyed being on your
Thank you very
podcast.
much. So, for that matter, I would close down the episode for today. And it was, like I just said, really, really fun having you here. And for everyone out there, I hope they had fun listening. And yeah, just have a wonderful day of your life today. Enjoy your night, afternoon, breakfast, whatever you are doing right now. And I will see you later. Goodbye.